I'm just about to watch episode 4 of the following, Mad Love. Before I do that though, I'm just going to do a little recap on the previous episode. We were introduced to a new accomplice of Carol's. Well, we're actually introduced to two, but I'll come back to that. His name was Rick, and he was kind of the bad guy for this episode, and he's gone on a killing spree for Carol. Parker and Hardy are able to track down Rick's house, but they only find his wife in it, Maggie. They interrogate her, but she claims to actually know nothing about Carol or her husband being involved with him. Parker interrogates Carol, and we learn that Carol has organised for Rick to take down the people Carol blames for his own downfall. Those people were a book critic that gave a bad review on one of Carol's books, the dean of the university that Carol used to work at, and of course Hardy. Rick is able to successfully kill the book critic and the dean of the university, but obviously not Hardy. Paul can no longer take the pain of watching Emma and Jacob be in a relationship at their hideout, so he then leaves. Despite his face being on the news for kidnapping Joey, Paul goes to the nearest town and seduces a local girl there. Paul has gone a bit nuts from jealousy, so he actually kidnaps this girl and brings her back to the house, where him and Jacob are forced to hide her in the basement. Parker interrogates Geordie, who's another accomplice of Dr. Carol's, who we met in episode 2. Parker is able to trick Geordie into telling her everything he knows about Dr. Carol. Unfortunately, he doesn't know very much, but he is able to reveal that Maggie is working with Rick for Dr. Carol. Maggie at this point is in her house with Agent Riley under protective custody. Parker and Hardy try to warn Agent Riley that Maggie isn't who she claims to be, but before they get the chance, Maggie actually kills Agent Riley. Rick arrives at the house to run away with Maggie. Hardy intercepts him though and ends up actually killing Rick, though Maggie is able to get away. While this is happening, we see that Geordie has killed himself back at the hospital. He feels ashamed that he told Parker everything he knew and feels he has let Carol down. The best part of last episode were the flashback scenes between Carol and Hardy when they first met, and they seemed like they were quite good friends. This show, I do believe, is actually one of the best on air at the moment, and I think it's mainly down to the engagement between Kevin Bacon and James Purefoy on the screen. So far, the FBI knows of 7 of Carol's accomplices. These are obviously Paul, Jacob, Emma, Rick, Maggie, Geordie, and the girl on the pilot who put the pen in her eye. Obviously, she's dead, and so is Rick and Geordie, so this leaves only 4 accomplices that we know of that Carol has. Paul, Jacob and Emma are holding up in the safe house with kidnapped Joey, Claire and Carol's son, and Maggie is on the run at the moment. So are these all of Carol's accomplices, or does he have some more? I think he does have some more. Now I'm guessing that maybe Carol has someone on the inside of the bureau, and I think that personally it is Agent Parker. This is quite a popular opinion and theory at the moment. I think there's 2 main reasons for this. One is that there was a scene in episode 2 where Parker handed Carol the complete works of Poe, and there was a look that happened between them that seemed that something was going on. Also, there could have been a secret message in that book, maybe. The second reason is that Parker really badly wanted to interrogate Carol last episode. I think maybe it was so that he could give her some secret message and somehow communicate with her. A few people also think on some of the forums that I've been on that maybe Claire is one of Carol's followers as well. There's no evidence for this, but definitely I'll be keeping an eye on that. Some people even think that Agent Hardy might be one of Carol's accomplices. That was a joke, but if that actually does happen, I'll probably boycott Kevin Bacon's films for the rest of my life. So I'm about to watch episode 4 right now. I hope Agent Weston does something this episode, and is Agent Mason coming back? She was in the pilot, but then she just disappeared. Anyway, here comes episode 4. So finished watching the episode last night. I'm just going to go over what happened. It was quite a personal episode for Hardy. You know, the pace wasn't too fast, not as fast as the other episodes. But we did see some character development, which is at least something. The episode starts off with Paul, Jacob and Emma in the basement with her tied up hostage. I think her name's Megan. Paul's being extra creepy in this scene, and Emma suggests that they should kill Megan and bury her body before Joey is able to notice her. When Paul's alone with Jacob, he expresses how he is convinced that Jacob doesn't actually love Emma and he's living a lie. Paul thinks that Jacob really loves him. The next scene shows Hardy and Parker trying to calm down Claire, reassuring her that her son will be okay. Claire is frustrated that the FBI haven't really made any progress recently, and she thinks that Paul, Jacob and Emma are training her son to be a serial killer like they are. Hardy receives a phone call from a person called Jenny. This leads to a flashback that shows a blonde woman from Hardy's past. It is later revealed on in the episode that this woman is actually Hardy's sister. The main priority for the FBI this episode is to track down Maggie, as she may know where Joey and his kidnappers are hiding. Hardy interrogates Carol, revealing that he killed Rick last episode, and then goes on to ask about Maggie. Carol is surprisingly helpful and gives away her real full name. He also tells Hardy about other murders that she's committed and gotten away with in the past. This was a good scene because we got to see Hardy toy with and provoke Carol for a change, because it's normally the other way around. Paul and Emma are also having a conversation about Maggie. They know from the news that she hasn't been caught yet, but they also can't get in touch with her via the hidden mobile phone they have. The reason the mobile phone is hidden is so that Joey can't phone his mother, though Joey, spying on Emma and Paul, sees where the phone is actually hidden. Emma and Paul then proceed to have a bitch fight over which one of them should be with Jacob. Paul reveals to Emma that Jacob is living a lie in more ways than one, as he has never actually killed anyone, which shocks Emma. Back at the bureau, they have found some CCTV footage of Maggie and are trying to estimate where she went next. Hardy then gets another call from Jenny, which he answers this time, but it isn't actually Jenny calling him, it's Maggie. Maggie is taking revenge on Hardy for killing Rick, and she tells Hardy that if he doesn't come to meet them alone, she'll kill Jenny. Maggie also reveals that she's gone rogue and she isn't actually following Carol's orders anymore. Emma confronts Jacob about how he hasn't killed anyone yet. She's obviously hurt that he lied to her, and she no longer trusts that he's actually devoted to this cause. She tells him that the only way he can prove that he still is by killing Megan. Jacob tries to build up the courage to kill her, but instead lets her go. She tries to run to safety, but Emma and Paul catch her and tie her back up in the basement. Emma and Paul then have a moment alone in the bathroom and then complete the love triangle. After a while, Jacob walks in and they both tell Jacob that they forgive him and they still believe in him, and I think they then just have a threesome in the shower. Hardy is leaving the building when Parker questions where he's going. He avoids answering, telling her that he's going to sort out a personal issue. Parker is suspicious and decides to send Weston to follow him. Parker was able to see that Jenny called Hardy before he left, and she tells this to Weston. Weston actually knows who Jenny is, and he's able to put two and two together to work out that Maggie is actually holding Jenny hostage. When Weston tells Hardy he knows the situation, Hardy is convinced to let Weston tag along. Hardy enters the restaurant where his sister stays whilst Weston waits behind. Hardy is then knocked unconscious by Maggie and is tied up in the same room as Jenny. Maggie plans to torture and kill Hardy in front of Jenny. There's then a flashback to when Hardy and Claire were in a relationship together. They're having a conversation in their bed, and we find out that Hardy has the most depressing past ever. His mum died of leukemia, his dad was shot on duty, and his older brother was a fireman who died in 9/11. Also in the flashback, Claire says to Hardy that death and him go back a long way, even longer than for Joe Carroll. It was quite a weird thing to say. I'm not quite sure what she meant by that. Back in real time, Maggie straps magnets to Hardy's chest in order to disrupt his pacemaker. It almost works, but Weston comes in the last second to save the day and kills Maggie, in some way I think to avenge Agent Riley. Hardy is then in the back of an ambulance. We find out that he's going to be okay, and he thanks Weston. Weston also reveals that they might be able to track Joey's position using Maggie's mobile phone, or something like that. Hardy then speaks to Jenny, advising she should get away, which is a relief to be honest, because she's already the most annoying character on this show. I thought the ending of this episode was actually quite sad. Unfortunately it was ruined a little bit by the overly cheesy dialogue though. Hardy visits Claire to tell her that they are closer to finding her son. She asks him to stay for breakfast, but he refuses even though he wants to. Hardy feels that his presence in Claire's life, it will stop her from ever moving on, because he's a constant reminder of the impact that Carol had in her life. Overall, it was an okay episode. We did get to learn a little bit about Hardy and why he is so miserable all the time. Though the way they did reveal Hardy's past, I thought it wasn't very effective. They should have maybe had more flashbacks, maybe even to one where we get to see Hardy's parents dying. That way it would have been a bit more personal and we could have sympathised with Hardy a bit more. This show does have a lot of potential. The cast is great and all the characters seem quite interesting, except for Jenny. I hope next episode does pick up the pace again, because to be honest, this episode felt a lot like filler for most of the part. Predictions for the next few episodes. Is Deborah Parker working for Carol? I already mentioned that she gave him the book and interrogated him personally. Though it's also been pointed out to me that if you remember, when Parker and Hardy were interrogating Maggie, the episode before this one, Hardy actually suspected that Maggie was working for Carol, but Parker convinced Hardy that she was actually genuine, which turned out not to be the case, because Maggie was in fact working for Carol. So it's kind of convenient that Parker ends up covering for her. Is Claire Matthews working for Carol? I personally don't think she does, but it is a popular opinion. The main reason for this theory is that Claire seems quite intent on gaining Hardy's affection, though would she really care if her son was being held hostage? If she was working for Carol, she would really be able to hurt Hardy because he is hopelessly in love with her. Does Agent Weston work for Carol? He revealed in the pilot that he wrote a thesis on Carol, so maybe this shows that he idolizes him. Weston always follows Hardy around a bit like a shadow, so maybe he can keep an eye on him. This episode we saw Weston actually kills Maggie, but we know Maggie went rogue and wasn't following Carol's orders anymore, so maybe Weston killed her because she was too unpredictable and she could have revealed Carol's plan if she was caught. I think if we look hard enough, there's evidence to show that anyone in this show is actually a cult member, and maybe that's the point. We're supposed to see Hardy lose trust in everyone, and Carol is therefore able to isolate him further. The next episode is The Siege. It comes out this Monday. I'm hoping the show picks up a bit more pace again, because this episode was a bit slow. Anyway, thanks for watching.